Imagine it's 2026. You're checking your retirement account, and the numbers are bleeding red. The news is a constant barrage of market chaos, a storm of uncertainty battering every corner of the economy. And the one person everyone expects to have the answers, the President of the United States, seems powerless to stop it. It doesn't matter who sits in the Oval Office. The economic storm that has been brewing for decades is finally making landfall. This isn't about today's politics, it's about math. It's about a series of decisions made over 50 years that have locked us into a trajectory that is almost impossible to escape. The very systems designed to create stability are now pointing toward a major correction. In this video, we're not going to talk about left versus right. We're going to pull back the curtain and show you the three unstoppable forces pushing our economy towards a cliff. This isn't just speculation, it's an explanation of the financial realities already in motion. And most importantly, we'll discuss how to understand this inevitable reset so you aren't a victim of it, but are prepared for what comes next. We're conditioned to believe the president is the captain of the economic ship. When things go well, they take the credit. When things go bad, they get the blame. A leader like Donald Trump, who stakes his reputation on his ability to command the economy, only amplifies this belief. He projects an aura of total control. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The president is more like a captain of a massive oil tanker in a hurricane, with a rudder that's far too small. He can try to steer, he can shout orders, but the sheer momentum of the ship and the overwhelming power of the storm are the forces truly in command. The economic crisis brewing for 2026 isn't a political problem you can solve with an executive order. It's a structural problem. It's a mathematical problem. It's the bill for a party that's been raging for half a century, and that bill is finally coming due. Policies enacted in 2025, whether it's tariffs or deregulation, are just tinkering at the edges. They're ripples on the surface of a deep, powerful current pulling the entire system in one direction. Trump or any president are constrained by this reality. They're trapped in a system where the politically popular choices are almost always the ones that make the long-term problem worse. To really understand why this crash seems unavoidable, we have to look past the headlines and the political theater. We need to look at the engine room of the economy and examine three core structural flaws that are now reaching their breaking point. The first and most powerful is a force that respects no politician and no party, the crushing weight of our national debt. Let's talk about the single biggest number in the world, the United States national debt. As of late 2025, that number has surged past a staggering $38 trillion. To make that number feel real, it means every single citizen in the United States owes over $114,000. It's a figure so large, it's almost meaningless, like trying to comprehend the distance to a star. But its consequences are about to become very, very real. For decades, the solution in Washington for both parties was simple. When in doubt, borrow more. We financed wars, tax cuts, and stimulus packages not with the money we had, but with money we borrowed from the future. For a long time, this seemed like a magic trick with no consequences. Interest rates were near zero, so the cost of carrying this giant credit card was manageable. It was like having a giant credit card where the bank only charged you a fraction of a percent in interest, so why not keep spending? But that era is over. We have now entered what some economists call a doom loop. It works like this. To fight inflation, the Federal Reserve had to raise interest rates. But when you have a $38 trillion debt, even a small increase in interest rates has explosive consequences. The cost of servicing our own debt, just paying the interest, is skyrocketing. In fact, the U.S. government is now spending more money on interest payments than on national defense. Let me say that again, because it's one of the most important facts of our time. We are spending more to service our past borrowing than to fund our entire military. These interest payments are now one of the fastest growing parts of the federal budget. This creates the doom loop. Higher interest payments mean bigger annual deficits. Bigger deficits mean we have to borrow even more money. Borrowing more adds to the national debt, which means even higher interest payments in the future.
It's a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle. It's not political, it's just math. The Congressional Budget Office projects that even under current law, the debt will surge past records set during World War II within this decade. And if policies like extending the 2017 tax cuts are made permanent, a cornerstone of Trump's agenda, some estimates project it could add another $4 to $5 trillion to the debt over the next decade. This is the mathematical trap. While positive economic growth can help, we can't just grow our way out of a debt that's expanding this quickly. We can't just cut our way out either, because interest payments themselves are becoming a huge piece of mandatory spending. We are on a path where the interest on our debt will consume a horrifying percentage of all tax revenue. This is the definition of an unsustainable path, and this severely limits any president's ability to respond to a new economic shock. The money simply isn't there. It's already been spent servicing the debt from the past. The second force driving us toward a 2026 reckoning is what many have called the everything bubble. And this bubble has recently been shaken by a new wave of extreme volatility. For over a decade, the same low interest rates that made our national debt seem manageable also created a feeding frenzy in financial markets. With savings accounts yielding nothing, investors had to pour their money into riskier assets to get any kind of return. This flood of cheap money inflated the prices of everything: stocks, bonds, real estate, and cryptocurrencies. It created the illusion of widespread wealth, but a lot of this wealth was built on a foundation of artificially low interest rates. Now that foundation is cracking. As interest rates have risen to more normal levels, the entire structure is beginning to groan under its own weight. We're seeing the consequences of this fragility play out in real time under the Trump administration's new economic policies in 2025. Trump's strategy, centered on an aggressive new round of tariffs, has injected a massive dose of chaos and uncertainty into the global economy. While the markets recovered and showed surprising strength through much of 2025, the key takeaway isn't the direction, but the volatility itself. The market has become unhinged from economic fundamentals, swinging violently based on policy announcements and political whims. This isn't a healthy market. It's the sign of a system under extreme stress, where elevated valuations mean any shock can cause a panic. But the impact goes far beyond Wall Street. These tariffs are a direct tax on American consumers and businesses. Economic models estimate that the new tariffs are costing American households hundreds and in some cases over $1,000 per year in additional expenses. For businesses, tariffs increase the cost of imported parts. They have two choices: absorb the cost and watch profits shrink, or pass it on to consumers as higher prices. We're already seeing this play out. Prices for many imported goods have seen significant increases. This creates a challenging combination: the risk of stagnating growth mixed with rising prices. Some economists are warning of a return to stagflation, a scenario we haven't seen since the 1970s, where the economy is weak but inflation remains stubbornly high. So, we have a market propped up by years of cheap money, now being rocked by unpredictable trade policy. We have consumers whose purchasing power is being eroded by higher prices, and we have businesses caught between rising costs and a weakening consumer. This is the second pillar of the coming correction: a fragile, overinflated financial system colliding with a policy agenda that prioritizes disruption over stability. The everything bubble is losing air, and the tariff shock is accelerating the process. The third and final pillar holding up the facade of our economy is the labor market. For years, we've heard the story of record low employment as proof of economic strength. But if you look just beneath the surface, the engine of American prosperity is sputtering. The jobs report is no longer a clear sign of health, but a warning of deep structural weakness. As of late 2025, the labor market is showing mixed signals, but with clear signs of deterioration. While headline unemployment remains low, payroll growth has slowed to a crawl since May of 2025. The weakness is particularly alarming when you look closer.
Small businesses, the supposed backbone of the American economy, have been especially sensitive to rising costs and economic uncertainty,
showing significant weakness in hiring. They are flashing a bright red warning sign. This isn't just a blip, it's part of a disturbing trend, and the pain isn't felt equally. Historically, the most vulnerable parts of the workforce, younger employees and minority groups, are the first to feel the effects of a cooling economy. Furthermore, the quality of jobs is degrading. The number of Americans working part-time, not by choice, but because they can't find full-time work, remains stubbornly high. The rate at which these involuntary part-time workers can transition into full-time employment has been declining. This means more people are stuck in lower-paying, less stable jobs with fewer benefits. It's a clear sign of growing slack in the labor market, where wage growth stagnates. In fact, wage growth for people changing jobs, a key indicator of a dynamic market, has been slowing down. This is the human cost of the macroeconomic forces we've discussed. The debt crisis and the tariff turmoil aren't abstract concepts. They translate into businesses that can't afford to hire and into families struggling with stagnant wages while the cost of living goes up. A healthy economy creates abundant, high-quality jobs. Our economy is struggling to do that. So, when you hear politicians boast about employment figures, you need to ask, what kinds of jobs are being created, and how many people are being left behind? The data shows an engine that is losing power and threatening to stall. No amount of political spin can hide the fact that the American worker is in an increasingly precarious position. If you're starting to see that the real story isn't what they're telling you on the nightly news, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. We're committed to cutting through the noise and giving you the kind of deep analysis you need to understand the forces shaping our world and protect your financial future. Don't miss what's coming next. So, we have a nation grappling with debt, a financial system trembling from policy shocks, and a labor market that is cracking under the strain. The logical question is, why doesn't somebody just fix it? Why can't a powerful president like Donald Trump simply reverse course? The answer lies in what can only be described as the political trap. The truth is, the politically safe and popular decisions are now almost always the exact opposite of the fiscally responsible ones. Both political parties are utterly trapped by this dynamic. Consider Trump's core economic agenda. A central promise is to make the 2017 tax cuts permanent. For his supporters, this is a non-negotiable. But as we've seen, budget analysts estimate this move alone would add trillions to the national debt over the next decade. This isn't a stimulus, it's pouring gasoline on a fiscal fire. But allowing taxes to go up for millions of Americans is seen as political suicide. So the trap is set. Either break a core promise or drive the country deeper into debt. He has also proposed a raft of new targeted tax breaks. No taxes on tips, on overtime, or on Social Security benefits. Each of these is incredibly popular with specific groups, but each further starves the government of revenue, widens the deficit, and accelerates the debt spiral. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget has estimated that Trump's proposed tax priorities could slash revenue by trillions over 10 years, driving the federal debt to truly catastrophic levels of 130 to 150% of GDP. On the spending side, the trap is just as powerful. The vast majority of the federal budget is mandatory spending on programs like Social Security, Medicare, and now the ballooning interest on the debt. These are the third rails of American politics. Touch them and you die. No serious politician from either party is willing to propose the kind of structural reforms needed to put our fiscal house in order. So the president is left with very little room to maneuver. He can't meaningfully cut spending where the real money is, and his political brand is built on cutting taxes, not raising them. This is why the problem transcends any one person. It's a systemic failure. The incentives of our political system are now fundamentally misaligned with the mathematical reality of our economy. Every difficult decision gets kicked down the road. Every budget is a compromise that papers over the cracks with more borrowed money. Trump can't stop this crash because he is a product of the very system that created it. He, like every other modern president, is trapped. He must choose between what is politically possible and what is economically necessary. And in Washington, politics always wins, until the moment it can't. That moment is fast approaching.